like to welcome you all to the Wakefield, Lynnfield educational series. Today is on cybersecurity. My name is John Smolinski. If we haven't met yet, please take the time to introduce yourself. Get it, Steve.
Just make sure people have the cell phones off.
Oh,
So,
housekeeping, please turn yourselves off. If you haven't met me yet, please take the time to introduce yourself before you leave today, because I'd like to make a personal contact with all of you that are here. I am the Executive Director of the Chamber, and we're looking to have more series of educational forums like this one. So if you have thoughts or ideas about something you'd like to see us present in the near future, please let us know, and we'll work on it and add it to our calendar. This morning, we're very, very pleased to be able to be hosted here by the Savings Bank, so thank you to the Savings Bank once again. Janice, Maria, for allowing us, Allie, bringing us in here. And what I'm going to do in a moment is introduce to you Maria Mello, the Senior Vice President of Technology for the bank. She'll give you a few words and then she'll introduce our presenter for this morning. Maria?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's great having everybody here. Just want to give you a few items for highlighting for this morning's meeting. Obviously, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity. We're going to go cover some of the threats that you're going to encounter, that you could possibly encounter. Then we'll go through some of the results and how to protect yourself. And there'll be a discussion on recovery. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. So please, if you've got any questions along, please, raise your hand. Absolutely, this is an interactive. If there's anything that you'd like to go over, please help, do answer, ask any question or anything like that. At this point, I am going to present it over to Michael Rodriguez, who is our head of IT here as well, does IT, and he's going to take over from the presentation here.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everyone. As we jump right on in, the very first thing I like to discuss when discussing cybersecurity is actually just give a definition of cybersecurity, because we hear the word a lot. So I'm actually going to have it right there on the board for you. I'll read it right from the board. So cybersecurity is the body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect networks, computers, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. Now, when we're talking cybersecurity, within the computing context, you want to keep in mind that we're not just talking just the computers. We're not just talking cybersecurity. We're talking about the physical security as well. Now, the goal for cybersecurity is to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that data. Cybersecurity represents the ability to defend against and recover from accidents like hard drive failures, power outages, and attacks from adversaries. So with that in mind, keep in mind that business continuity and disaster recovery planning is every bit as critical to cybersecurity as application and network security. So since we're speaking security, I'm going to jump into the threats. What kind of threats are out there? Now, we're going to basically focus on a cyber attack. So cyber attack is any unauthorized attempt to expose, destroy, or access your data. Basically, anybody who's just trying to get access without permission. Some of the most common attack vectors, the ways that people come and try to provide a cyber attack and try to get access to you, are malware. Malware is a very common term. It's derived from malicious software. So any malware acts against the intent of the user, and it can come in various forms. It can come in the form of a computer virus, just like a biological virus. Computer viruses can, wear you down, even cause you to die, and it's extremely contagious. So how can you get a virus? The viruses can come and spread through emails, social networks. What was that? Text messages, internet downloads. Basically, anything you use the computer for can spread a computer virus. That's that contagious. So keep that in mind. And this includes cell phones, Apple included. Macs are also included when we're talking about viruses. There's a misnomer that Apple computers do not get viruses or malware. They do. So another form of malware is a Trojan horse. Trojan horse pretends to be a good program so that you can let it inside of your boundaries. So the terminology comes from ancient history, when the Greeks couldn't penetrate the walls of the Trojans, so they built the horse, a big hollow wooden horse, hid all the troops inside, and then when the Trojans took them inside the walls, which symbolizes your firewalls and all your security measures, Then the Greeks came out of the horse and attacked from within. That's the same concept of a Trojan horse in the digital age. We also have ransomware. That's a very popular term. Now, ransomware is a really serious virus in the sense that it will encrypt all of your files, or it could potentially encrypt all of your files wherever it lands. So if it lands on a computer, you can potentially have your computer locked down. Now, last year we had a very infamous WannaCry virus. It was a ransomware virus. Although I'm not going to speak too much details about it, it was actually a fairly fake ransomware virus, but as up here, you can see ransomware will appear on your computers on whatever screen. This is a symbol of what an example rather, of the WannaCry virus and what it looked like. As you can see towards the bottom, it says send $300 worth of Bitcoin. Ransomware will give you an amount to pay, a means to pay, because a lot of us hear about Bitcoin, don't know how to get it. Well, ransomware, they're going to give you the means to go get some Bitcoin. They want to get paid. As you can see, it's only $300. They keep the amounts very minimal in the hopes that if they infect a lot of computers, most agencies, most people will pay that small fee to just avoid having to deal with the ransomware. With this one in particular, it also has a timeline. It says payments will be raised on such and such time. Your files will be lost in such and such time. The idea behind ransomware is to elicit an emotional effect. So you're going to react emotionally to ransomware, hopefully, and just pay. Catch with paying a ransomware, and this has to be determined on a business level or on a personal level. If you pay for ransomware, you may get your files back, you may not. It's up to the discretion of whoever planted the ransomware onto your system. Also, if they do give you your files back, you still have that virus on your computer. So what's to stop them from attacking again? They may not attack, they may. That's the stuff that you have to have in mind when deciding what process, what policy, what decisions you're going to make with ransomware. Depending on what it's infecting, you might need that data and you might not have had good backups. So you're stuck, you just pay, maybe you back up that information. Just keep in mind, anything that you back up after having been infected still also is infected. Moving on to the next attack vector is the web-based attack. Basically, that covers any kind of malicious website. Malicious websites are created with the intent that they will attack you in one form. So let's say they sent you an email first. It has a malicious link on there so you can get directed to that website. But they also look at the possibility of human error. So on this next slide, I have typed Google, looking for a Google search, and I forgot to put the L. And, oops, there you go. This is the screen that comes up. I know it's fairly small on the screen, so I do apologize. But you can clearly see that that is not a Google search. It's asking up there, what is your age and gender? And on the left, it has male. On the right, it has female. It has a whole bunch of numbers on there. That entire page is full of all kinds of code that if you click anywhere on there, you can potentially get infected. The idea is that some people will think, maybe this is just some kind of a Google census. I'll put in my age and my gender. Why not? Other people, they have two little X's above it. They, well, no, I don't like this. I'm just going to X it out. Well, those X's are also potentially a code to infect you with malware. Now, this in itself, if you actually just exit it out of your browser and then do a quick virus scan with your virus software, you should be fairly fine in most cases. Then we have malicious codes on legitimate websites. So let's say social networks. You have Facebook or another search engine, Yahoo. Everybody knows there's advertisements all up and down all of these web pages. Bless you. Most people most organizations that host these websites, they make their income off of these advertisements. So that if you land on my page and you click on her page, the advertisement, then I get credit for it. Well, knowing that there are some sites like a search engine like Yahoo or Google or social media like Facebook, that you have millions upon millions, perhaps even billions of people going to these pages, someone is going to inadvertently click on one of those ads. So what they do is they overlay their own programming They might make it look exactly like the exact same ad that's on there, or they might make it their own ad in hopes that you click on it, and that will redirect you or that will infect you. That's the idea behind having a malicious code on a legitimate website. So you actually went to the URL, you see it at the top, and we talk a lot about looking at the URL, making sure you're at the right page. That doesn't mean that the ads are actually all correct. Next, we have social engineering. Another term for social engineering is phishing, because people are generally phishing for information. It's social engineering or phishing is when an attacker tries to trick you into providing information, so personal information. So we're talking about social security numbers or bank information or whatever it is that they're after. There's various forms of phishing. It's not all just on the computer. We might get a phone call. So a popular phone call is, hello, I'm your ISP, which is your internet service provider, be it Verizon or Comcast or whoever it is. And they'll say, we've noticed a lot of illegal activity coming from your router, and we need to investigate. We need to get into your systems. And they're going to try to, again, elicit that emotional response. Oh, no, I haven't done anything, or what have my kids got into this time? So they're going to say, don't worry, we can help you out. Just dial us in. So they're going to give you instructions on how to let them get into your computer to save your computer, because you have all this illegal activity, and the FBI might be involved, and Lord knows who else. That's the idea behind this, that emotional response. Once they're in, they might even show you a whole bunch of different technical jargon that you're going to go, oh my, that's bad. And it really means nothing, but because you don't know any better potentially, and then they are now stealing your codes. They might even decide to say, hey, what do you do with this computer? Do you bank on here? Oh, I do email and I do banking. Oh, well, let's take a look at that information real quick and see what I can get from there. From phishing, you also have emails. Popular email might be, one really popular one is foreign dignitary. Hi, I am such and such royalty from such and such country. I have all this money, but it's locked away. If you would only send me $500, I will be more than happy to triple or pay you back tenfold. This is just going to help me out. I really need your help, and they'll try to elicit that. But also keep in mind that it could also be, if you are under a targeted attack, an email that looks extremely like a legitimate one. So we do see emails that come from what appear to be legitimate sources. So it'll have the same build, it'll have my signature at the bottom, let's say, but it'll have maybe a different email address. So if I'm at thesavingsbank.com, the email address might be thesavingsbank.net, or something similar, and it's going to try to redirect you into different locations. So beware of those type of emails. Then you've got the pop-up. This is generally once you've already received some kind of link that you shouldn't have clicked on, or you went to a website and you clicked on one of those ads that had a code, and then you'll get a pop-up on your screen. Now, some pop-ups are just annoying. Other pop-ups can seem very scary and can elicit that emotional effect. On this next slide, you'll see an example of what I mean. Here it says, Windows Defender Alert. So you're thinking, oh no, what's going on? But at least something caught it. The Zeus virus was detected on your computer. And it tells you a whole bunch of stuff. Don't shut down, don't reset, don't do anything, but you might be susceptible to some kind of identity theft. We might get your passwords, we might get your income, your credit card information. We can have issues with your local hard disk. But don't worry, you're fine for now. Just call our number. And again, somebody on the other line is going to be expecting to have you let them into their system so they can wreak havoc onto your computer and actually infect your device. So although this pop-up is part of malware, there is malicious code behind it, you're not really infected yet. This is kind of that Trojan Horse idea to some degree, where they're hoping that you allow them in because they don't have access. So they're trying to elicit that emotional response. All right, now, so those were the types of threats. Now, what are the results of these type of threats? And there's many, many more. It's a scary world out there. Well, it all depends on the type of attack or what the information is that the attacker is going after, or what the attacker is trying to do. First, is the attack against confidentiality. So that's basically data theft. Something like a keylogger. Now, a keylogger, sometimes called a keystroke logger or system monitor, is a type of surveillance technology. The technology will capture all of the keystrokes. So from the moment of infection, the moment that software is on your computer or your whatever device is on, anything that you then type will get recorded. And when they recover that log, everything you've typed will now be provided to that individual, or whatever the attacker was. Now, that means that if you were typing up a secure document, if you were typing up an email, if you were entering credentials into a secure database of some sort, or your banking information, all of that, keystroke by keystroke, including your errors, including the backspaces, everything will get captured. And that person will then take all of that information and use it for their own benefits. We also have what we call a man-in-the-middle attack. So this is most popular and most in common with what I was discussing earlier about the malicious websites. So let's say you're at your computer and you want to get to your financial institution. Generally speaking, you go ahead and plug in your URL, whatever the financialinstitution.com or whatever the address is, and it pops up and it asks you for your credentials, and then you have direct access to your money. Well, hackers know that this is the process, and they take advantage of the inherent trust that you have at going to your local financial institution or whatever this website happens to be. And so they'll build a malicious website that looks identical in nature to the website that you actually want to go to. So the hack goes, okay, first they'll infect you somehow, either with a pop-up or an email, so that you get redirected to them. And they go, okay, when you go to your financial institution, you're actually going to go to the hacker. And everything that you put in, and let's say for this scenario, it's an email that says, hey, we, your financial institution, have noticed some illicit activity on your account. Please reset your credentials. Just click here. And they've now sent you to that site. Now, anything that you've entered, all your credentials, all your information, now gets uploaded to the hacker. Now, a very smart attacker will also redirect it right back to the financial institution, so that everything that you've put in, you've given to the attacker. They've now recorded it, but they forwarded that to your actual institution. So your institution also recorded all your keystrokes. Now, the purpose for that is you are none the wiser. They have your financial information, they have your credentials, and let's be honest, most people use their same credentials across many different applications, which is a no-no, but it's human nature. So once they have that one, they're going to try it against all other applications that they can. They're going to try it against your emails, they're going to try it against your social media, they're going to try it against whatever they can. Or maybe they just want it to cache. So now, moving along with data theft, we have port scanning and ping sweeps. So every device has ports. Consider them a door or a window in your home. So you have many ports, and some of them are a necessity. So you've got the front door. Well, I need that to get inside the house. And I've got a couple of windows on the third floor. That's just for some air. It's kind of just a way to air out the house, or maybe it's for aesthetics, whatever the case may be. All devices are kind of the same. You have ports on, for example, the mail port is port 25. They're all numbered. Internet port is port 80. Secure internet 443. These are common ports, and most devices require this if you're going to try to make some kind of transactions. But because all devices have extra ports, and not everybody secures those ports, it's like leaving your home, locking the front door, but leaving the back door open, leaving all the windows on the first floor unlocked and open, and anybody that can find one of those, or maybe they're closed, and anybody that goes and jiggles the window, so, oh, no, that one's closed, no, this one's closed, this one's open. Well, that's what port scanning is. They're going to try to discover which one of those windows or which one of those doors, which port is open. So you want to make sure to run some vulnerability scans and do your own port scanning within your devices, all your devices, so that you can know which window is open, and then close it, if you can. There might be a need for that window to be open, and then you're going to have to come up with a different layer of security behind that. And then I also wanted to mention printing and downloading. So this is a little bit more basic and more internal. So this is someone with unauthorized access to some kind of your files, any bit of your data. The person could have accessed it via somebody else's computer, or maybe they have read-only and it's supposed to stay on their computer, but you haven't locked down the possibility of them printing it to anywhere or sending or downloading it. So if you haven't locked that down, I could take a USB flash drive and plug it into my computer, let's say, and I can download it. I'm not supposed to, but I did. And now, from that point forward, that data is now on my flash drive and is only as secure as I keep it within my flash drive. So if I then decide to, let's say it's some extremely sensitive confidential data that's very, very valuable, I decide to sell that, well, this computer still has the data. I haven't done anything with it there. I've just taken it. So you've got to be aware of the fact that printing, and because if you have it on paper, it's just as valuable, they can still read it, those are still also means of data theft. So the next attack is the attack against integrity. This is basically just file corruption. So if you get infected with what we call a worm, the worm will burrow through your computers, and maybe all the files that you've been working on, this big presentation for cybersecurity in front of the Chamber of Commerce, is now all damaged and unreadable. So the idea behind that is that if I can't present it or if I don't have it in the form that I intended, then my integrity is challenged. We also have something called a Salami attack or Salami slicing. The idea behind Salami slicing is if you take a little bit of data and you either capture it or change it over just a little bit of data in a small measure in one file might not be noticeable. You do so on a large scale, it'll be more, the damage is that much more profound. For example, in a banking institution, if you take 1/4 cent off of one particular account, might not even go noticed. You do that with across all of the accounts, that's a lot of money that the attacker just gained, and the integrity of that particular banking institution is now up in question. Next type of attack is the attack against availability. So this is kind of like that original computer virus. You got system slowdowns, you've got systems instability, so you have crashing and what we call lagging, it's just taking a while. You've got connectivity issues, can't get to the internet. I've got a lot of web-based applications. I need to get to the internet to access my files or do my transaction. And I've got all the pop-ups that's popping up all over the place. The idea is if you can't get to your data, then it's no good to you. And keep in mind, a lot of these attacks are done in layers. So an attacker might actually do an attack against availability as a decoy. So I'm going to bombard you with pop-ups. Actually, this is very popular in movies and in TV shows. They go, all right, I'm going to stop them for a while. And you see all these kind of pop-ups going on the other person's computer. And the guy goes, oh, no, I've got to clear up the pop-ups before I can do this other task. Well, that's the idea behind it. The attacker wants to do something else, and so they have all these pop-ups. And sometimes all the nuances of the pop-ups, that's just because they want you to click on one by accident. And the easiest way is to have them all over your screen. You're going to eventually click on one so that they can then give you another malware or some kind of other attack. Now, we move on to protecting. So how do you protect yourself from these attacks? So number 1 is security training. So hackers rely partly on their security penetration skills. The other real thing that they need is human error. With that, I'm actually going to pass around something real quick. And if you wouldn't mind just passing around as I talk, I'm sure it's very familiar to everyone here. Just take a good look at it, and I'll explain why it is that I'm passing it around later. So, very important is cybersecurity begins with awareness. You want to make sure to train your people and yourself on cybersecurity, on the different vulnerabilities and risks that they're out there, what kind of threats like we've covered. But you also want to put into place some good security policies and practices. You want to maintain strong authentication policies. So that's where you say, okay, those annoying passwords that constantly change and then up in numbers that we have to be creative on, that's a strong authentication policy. So depending on what type of information you're protecting, you might want to say, okay, we only need 8 characters, and we don't care if they're upper, lowercase, special characters, we just need 8 characters, and that's going to change every 6 months. Well, that might be something that's sufficient for you. Or if it's something more sensitive, it might be 13 characters with upper, lowercases, numbers, special characters, and changes every 30 days. You have to decide between securing that information, making sure it's secure, and keeping it available to those who need it, because too many passwords could cause an opposite effect. You also have to keep in mind not storing sensitive data where it's openly accessible. That goes back to a person being able to download information or maybe getting a printed copy. Let's say I had downloaded onto that flash drive some files, and then I left it here on the desk, like I did earlier with my little clicker. I left it outside. What if this was files? Somebody grabs it, go, ooh, I have this, and now they're walking away. I have no idea where it's at. So it's very easily available. It's sensitive data. You don't want to do that. You also have to schedule some regular vulnerability scans on all network devices. So that's anything that's connected to your network. Again, I had mentioned earlier printers, copiers, your computers, laptops, mobile devices like a cell phone, anything that's on your network, you want to make sure to run some regular vulnerability scans. There are agencies out there that'll do it for you. You can do all kinds of different testing. You should have a regular schedule for it depending on what you determine to be suitable for your needs. This way you know what's available, because how do you secure something unless you know there's a gap, there's an opening? You want to make sure that Windows is actually secure. So until you get there and tug on it, you don't really know. So want to make sure to run some vulnerability scans. Next is patching. Patch. You really can't blame your network team, your IT team, for what they call a zero-day attack, a zero-day vulnerability. That's a vulnerability that isn't known until the moment someone used it. So that happens, nobody knew about it, it's not really anybody's fault, now we just get into reaction mode, let's go protect against and do what we can. But they constantly come out with vulnerabilities, and that information gets divvied out amongst the populace. Same thing with the WannaCry. Microsoft had sent some patching for systems against what was the vulnerability that was the WannaCry, and people did not do it. They were the ones susceptible to it. So if they would have been more secure against that particular vulnerability. So we can't stress enough, you want to make sure you're patching, and updating your software. Now, I do understand that sometimes a patch can't be done because it's incompatible or causes some kind of side effect with whatever program you're trying to run. Well, you have to weigh that cost, like anything else. So you have to look at, okay, if I put this patch in place, this is the type of security that it's going to be providing me. But it's going to remove my availability. So knowing the type of security that it's providing me will also tell me what kind of a gap in my security there is. So now I have to build something else around it. If I determine I'm not going to patch, but I'm going to document that, and I'm going to find some other way around it. And before I move on, so I did say I'll explain this. So as everybody saw, would anybody disagree that's just a flash drive? Okay. So actually, this is what they call a USB rubber ducky. This actually allows a hacker to commit to what they call a HID attack. It's human interface device attack. So in here is actually a little computer chip, and I've got a little SD card with where I would put my payload or collect your information. I can plug this in after programming it to any open device and inject keystrokes. It's keystroke injector. So basically, anything that I would be able to do myself behind the keyboard of your computer, I can now do so on your machine. Now, basically, these type of things they take advantage of the inherent trust between your computing device and the keyboard. Keyboards are understood. So even if you had port controls for USB, something like this, you put it in, the computer's going to read it as a keyboard. And this can type 3,000 characters in 1 minute. So long as I've already planned the attack and I've already typed in my code, I can now type in whatever I need. So all I need is 15 seconds or so, plug it into your computer, or I can pretend to be an intern coming in for an interview, and I forgot my resume. Hey, front desk, can you just plug this into the computer real quick? I just print out that resume that's on there. And they plug it in, they can print out the resume and inject the code. And then I can get into your systems. So keep that in mind when I say the human error is a big factor. I'm going to be looking for an open computer, someone who walked away, didn't secure it, which happens quite often, too often, I believe. By the way, quick tip. If you click on the bottom left corner of your keyboard, as long as it's Windows keyboard, is the Windows logo. That's called the window key. If you click on that and you hit the L key for lock, you can instantly lock your computer, and you can kind of avoid all of this. And once it becomes muscle memory, as you're stepping up off the chair, you just kind of do a quick keystroke, because there's usually one on the right corner as well. So I usually hit it with my thumb, and then I hit it with my middle finger, the L key, and voila, I've locked my system. I don't have to worry about somebody being able to get access to my system. So moving on to recovery. So all companies will experience some kind of a cyber attack, even if strong controls are in place. That in mind, as I mentioned, we want to make sure to have, practice, and review your disaster recovery and business continuity plans. You want to make sure that not only do you have a plan, but that you've practiced it out year to year. Make sure that any new employees or anybody who's part of the disaster recovery or the business continuity, easy for me to say, is aware of what these things are and where they are. A good thing to have in there is to, if you've been attacked, is to isolate any suspected equipment. So someone comes up and says, hey, I've got this weird program on here, or I got ransomware. You want to isolate that. What I mean by that is you'll determine this within your own organizations, but you want to unplug it from the network. Generally speaking, the first idea is to just pull the power cord. That's a hit or miss, because now you could potentially corrupt any of the traces that were left behind from the attacker. So if you want to be able to, if you've decided that you want to know who attacked you or how they attacked you, so you can understand the gap in your security, how did they get in the first place? Generally speaking, I don't suggest unplugging it or powering it down. Instead of that, just pull the Ethernet cables, that big phone cord, and they come in all kinds of colors. I usually wave them a couple around. They're like purple and yellow, and I say they're an orange, and I wave them around in everybody's faces, and this is the Ethernet cord. So next, you want to communicate any suspected breach or attack with whoever needs to know. So be that management, the IT team, public relations. You never know what agency is that's being attacked or what information might have been compromised. You might need to contact your legal team or local law enforcement, federal law enforcement. It all depends on what kind of attack, what information, what kind of business you're running. But you want to make sure to communicate. The sooner the better. You want to record the details of any of the suspected cyber incidents. Even if it turns out it wasn't really an incident, but at least you're keeping record of it. Because if it was an incident, you're going to need that to determine, again, why you got attacked, how you got attacked, and you're going to arrange a forensic investigation of your network after the fact, so all of those details will count. And the details, as a matter of fact, I believe they're getting the pamphlet. We're providing you a pamphlet. At the bottom of it, it'll actually say what kind of information. It's just a detailed record. So who accessed the computer, which computer was accessed, where they were, what they were trying to do, did they have authorization to be on that computer, et cetera, et cetera. You're gonna, date and time, very important, date and time when this occurred. You're gonna collect all of that information so that you can know more information to pass on to your forensics team so that you can figure out when you got infected, how you got infected, and have more control over the situation. With that, my final slide here, Just a quick reference guide for cybersecurity. We use the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a very reputable source of information. They have a cybersecurity framework. It's very detailed. It's fairly generic for any business. The idea behind it, as you can see, is it's a cyclical framework. Its purpose is, or its main point is basically identifying your security gaps. Again, finding that unlocked window. You have to run scans, you have to run tests, you have to run scenarios so you can see where those security gaps are. Once you know what those security gaps are, then you add protective measures. Again, if there was an open window and it's an open window, again, I'm saying window instead of port or whatever device, just if you have any gap, any opening, you need to know, do I need that open? So port 25, like I mentioned earlier, is for email. I have a multifunction device. Multifunction device, printer, scanner, copier, fax, those type of devices. They have the ability nowadays to be able to scan and send directly to email. Well, do I allow that in my organization? If the answer is yes, then I probably need that port 25, or I have to do some other kind of coding to, behind the scenes to be able to say, all right, if you're going to email, you're going to go this route. But I'm going to have a port open because it's necessary for the function, for that particular function. But if I've decided I'm not going to allow emailing directly from the scanner because I don't think it's secure enough, then that port 25 should be shut down because you don't want to have it just open and available for an attacker to use to be able to get to your system. So you might think the multifunction device is not important, but it's on your network. And most of them have an access for the USB, so if I'm an attacker and I got my little rubber ducky and I plug it in right into the printer, and what's so suspicious about someone going up to the printer and trying to print something, even if you don't really recognize the person in a large organization, they're just at the printer, it's not really that suspicious, but they're running some kind of a code, so you want to keep that in mind. The next point is detecting the vulnerabilities and threats. So you want to have things on, security is all about layers, so you want to have things in place so that you can detect when you're infected or potentially infected. You want to have people notifying you. It's not all just technology, like I said, there's a lot of physical involved. You want to make sure that people, if they saw malware or they have phishing scams of any sort, that they notify you. So that's detecting as well. That's detecting that someone's trying to get access. You get a lot of suspicious phone calls where people are calling you and asking for extra sensitive information. And by that, I could just mean department head names if they're not publicly listed, or internal numbers that are not publicly listed. That information is fairly sensitive to some organizations. So if you're getting a lot of repetitive phone calls, just that itself is detection. Then you have your antivirus software that runs on your computer that will say, hey, you just got, someone was trying to get into your system. We've caught it, we've blocked it, we've quarantined it, we deleted it, we did whatever it did. But now you know if you get repetitive hits on that one machine, there's probably a problem there. So that's all part of detection. Then you have your response. You have a plan of action. How are you responding to it? If you do have malicious software on these devices, how do you plan to clean them up? Do you plan, because you have all your systems backed up, you're just going to junk the entire device and go to your backup and then recreate the device? Or are you going to have someone work on somewhere else on a different location until the forensic team gets involved? Those are the ideas behind recovery. Having mentioned that, keep in mind if, and this is fairly important, a lot of people tend to miss this. So if I'm your employee and someone called me and said, so my boss, Maria Mello, so someone calls and says, hey, I'm such and such, I'm working with Maria Mello. She said for me to collect your credentials. I need your username and password for the network because I'm running some security tests. And I go, sure, here's my credentials, and pass them over. And then I go, wait a minute, I should have cleared that with Maria first. If that happens, you can't just say, oh, lock down that one computer. They now have my credentials. So anything that I have access to, whoever just gained that information now also has access to. So the IT team should then forcefully disable that account or force change the password of the account and notate and then take a plan of action in that, because it's not just affecting that one device. And then after recovery, you repeat the steps all over. You do your scans and you search for gaps in your system and you identify what the risks are, the vulnerabilities, and your threats, and we do it all over again. And this should be, again, a cyclical process. That's easy for me to say. You determine whether that's every quarter, twice a year, once a year, every 2 years. It all depends on what kind of system. You determine the severity of the systems. If they're down, can I still operate? That's your business continuity. Do I have backups in place? Are they in a secure location where I don't have my backup right next to the main server, so if there's a flood there, I've lost both? Then you plan these things out and you keep planning them out constantly. As technology changes, so do the attacks, and they get that much more sophisticated. And with that, I'll take any questions. Please keep in mind that we are using the microphone on the camera, so as you ask questions, please project. Yes, sir.
Well, good morning, and nice done. Really enjoyed your presentation. Very informative. You structure the very innovative. I walk away with more knowledge. So nice job on that.
Good.
The question that I have for you is, as we know, every month we have a headline of a major retailer getting hacked, and millions of clients' credit card information get stolen. And if this happens to large organizations that have billions of dollars to invest in their IT, right? We're really curious to get your take on many of us here, accept payments, whether it's a point of sale or accept payments online, right? What would be these good practices to safeguard the payment of credit card information of the people that we do business with?
So there's no specific answer to that in the sense of it all depends on what kind of systems you're using. The most important is basically, again, going through what I just covered, is just making sure that whatever system you do have has those security measures. So you're collecting that information, and there's certain regulations that you have to abide by, that we all have to abide by to remain in compliance. You want to know what those regulations are. You want to know that your people are also trained. So let's start with the point of sale. So I'm at the register. Whoever's on the register, they should understand, all right, you want to make sure that they're processing it correctly. You can upgrade to the chip if you haven't had the chip readers. I go to a lot of merchants, and they're smaller merchants most of the time, and they have the chip reader, and they say, don't use the chip, and I have to slide the card. So that would be a less secure manner of collecting that information. So you can look into that. Now, whether or not you can afford it, you always have to measure out the cost benefit. You have to look in your systems. Big organizations, they make the news because they're big organizations. We are all just as susceptible. Doesn't matter the level, if we're the big guy, we're the small guy, we're just as susceptible. It really comes down to knowing your system. And so talking to the IT department or getting the security information of whatever applications you're using to collect that information. If you're collecting in handwritten form at any given time, knowing that there's a process to make sure that that information stays secure. Making your customers aware. We'll never ask for X type of information. You get those a lot in emails. If you get someone asking for your credentials, or if you're getting someone to ask for your entire bank information, that's not us. The idea is to inform your customers, but inform your internal staff as well. And then making sure that whatever system you have in place has whatever security measures they do have, that you have them available for your organization. So there's no one solution because there's multiple ways of attack. It's just awareness, I guess, and patching, and that's really, I would say, is the key. As long as you know what you have, what is available, and just educating yourself, making yourself that much more knowledgeable in your systems, and maybe testing your staff if trying to go having a security an organization that is specifically for security go around and doing some penetration testing and seeing what they can find. And then they can give you some information as to what steps you can take to further your security. And let me be clear, most security audits, like any other audits, you're going to get findings. The idea is they're going to find something. So you can have the most secure system. They're still going to find something because it's just inevitable. The most secure system is a system that's turned off. You know, that's pretty much it. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
I have a question regarding the key logging. So if you go into a website and, well, if you allow your computer to save passwords, is that considered key logging? Like, because you're not actually typing it in? So is it safer to actually let your computer save the password?
So no, key logging is not the saving of that password. That's you've entered the password and your computer recognizes that particular code as a whole. A keylogger will actually record each keystroke as you're typing. Now, as far as the second portion of that question, as far as whether it's safer to keep your passwords on the computer, I inherently say no. If I have access to your computer and you have even just your email, for example, and you enter, let's say you use Gmail, you enter Gmail or Yahoo Mail or Outlook, whatever it is, you type that in, and here comes your username, and you've got ... I can get access to that computer, and I can actually see very easily what that password is.
So my question wasn't with the key. What I'm saying is, if your computer saves the password, say you don't have to type that password in, then a keylogger wouldn't be able to see what you're typing because you're not typing it in, correct?
For that particular instance, that is correct. It wouldn't necessarily see because you're not typing. So for that one instance, I would say the keylogger wouldn't be able to get that password. So for just the keylogger, that's safer. But then you're in your application and you're typing away and it's collecting all that data. And again, if you've already have all these passwords saved and you don't lock your computer for even just a minute, I can now have access. Especially, let me be very clear, a good attacker will do their due diligence on any particular target that they really have their hearts and minds set out to. They can spend years just gathering information. As easy as just going onto your social media pages and visiting the locations and acting like they're interested parties. They might even get a job with one of your vendors in hopes that they can come and infiltrate and get more information. If they really wanted to attack you, yes, I mean to scare you a little bit, if they really want to attack you, they're going to get access to you. So if you have your password saved, and you walked away because you wanted to get one of those coffee cake muffins out in the hall, and I got to your computer, now I have easier access. So although you're protected against the keylogger in that instance, you're leaving yourself that much more vulnerable.
So what about the apps that you can, like a file that you can lock your passwords into?
So those, I have mixed feelings on a personal level on those, but those are fairly good because, again, there's so many applications, there's so many passwords, it just makes it so much more complicated. So there are some really good apps. I won't mention any names on these particular apps, but where you can put all the credentials and then you lock that one and you know one set of credentials. So long as that particular application has good encryption policies and you never forget that one password, then I would say that those are a better option than saving them on your browsers, because this way you can unlock that one and then have access to it. Just keep in mind that now as an attacker, I only need to know one password, and that's just to that one particular application, then I have them all. So you, again, will weigh the options. You decide what's better for you. If there's so many applications and passwords and I just can't remember them all, and I don't want to write them down, because if I write them down, somebody comes around, takes a picture, yanks it away, then I'm stuck, then maybe that might be an option. But that's something that you decide. Any other questions?
Mike, I have a question. At the beginning you talked, you mentioned that if some malware comes in and they're looking for codes, and even if you want to escape and press and get out of there, they get a code from that too, is that right? So how do you prevent any of that stuff? Just unplug the computer or the Ethernet? Or
Yes, so he's referencing the, like when I mistyped Google and I have up there and I had the, all these particular questions, and they have a couple X's. Now, on your browser, at the very top right corner, you'll have that one X. You'll also have on your browser on the left, let's say for Internet Explorer, you'll have it says File, and you can click File. At the bottom, you can click Exit. There's also other ways to kill processes using the Task Manager, which is the easiest method to get to a Windows Task Manager. If you see the clock, which is usually on the bottom right, if you've left the taskbar down there, you right-click on there, and then you look for where it says Task Manager, you left-click, and then you find a particular application that you want to stop. You can end the task there. Those are ways to kill that particular page, because the page is trying to have you click everywhere but where you really should be. So long as you haven't clicked on those other X's that aren't real, which sometimes they're very confusing, so you might inadvertently still click on it, you're pretty much safe. As far as unplugging the Ethernet cable, well, it all depends. These pop-ups, they're generally going to give you some kind of, I don't want to call it a small virus, but they're going to give you something not so potentially harmful, potentially. It might give you the most horrific virus there can be, I can't tell you. So I would suggest just making sure you have good antivirus and anti-malware software. So if you inadvertently click on that X, and it gives you an injected code, that your antivirus or anti-malware software will have caught it. Another good practice is, let's say for your home computers, definitely for business computers, if you don't need administrative rights onto that particular computer, don't use it, don't have it. So on my home computer, I have 2 accounts for just myself. I have my administrator account, which gives me access to everything on that computer, make whatever changes I need. And then I have my local standard user account, which is where I do all of my internet banking and all whatever else I might be doing on my computer. This way, if I do click on that, and it doesn't have as much access. It has only as much access as I have on using that one account. So those are kind of the measures. If it becomes something like a ransomware, yes, I would suggest go ahead and unplug the Ethernet cable because you don't want it spreading. Now, if you're at home and you only have one computer, unplugging the Ethernet cable is not going to do much for you because there's no network to really traverse. But it may still be a good practice depending on what you have available if you have some kind of software support team, because if you unplug it from the network, then hopefully whatever virus is on there isn't going to use your email to now infect your family and friends. So again, food for thought, and you make a decision based on what you find yourself in front of.
So a lot of us, like me, are just small businesses that don't have, I am the IT department, you know. Are there companies out there that you can recommend or suggest that can maybe even just look at my system, my network, to make sure I have everything locked down?
I personally cannot recommend anything.
But are there companies, this is because now I'm totally paranoid about
Well, there are plenty of agencies out there. There are reputable sources. You can, if you've made yourself available to some good networks of other like-minded businesses, maybe some bigger organizations, then you can get that more detailed information on a private setting. I personally can't provide any kind of names or reference anybody. But there are organizations. And again, it's just being aware. So I talk and I make the cyber world seem very, very scary, because that's kind of my job. But as long as you're aware and you kind of know what you're doing, or in the sense of you now know, okay, you know what? These people are asking me for my credentials. I don't think I really want to provide those. Or I get an email from someone I wasn't expecting in my business, and it seems like a client contract, but I don't know that name. Let me use the contact information that I already have and I know is secure. And let me call that person and say, hey, Maria, did you send me an email with some kind of secure attachment asking me for X, Y, and Z? And if she says no, then you know I'm not going to click on anything there. I'm going to try to delete that, maybe block that email because I'm being scammed. So keeping that type of information in mind. But yes, there are organizations out there. There are organizations that are specifically designed to do just your security.
Do you use any keystroke encryption software?
I don't know if I can answer that.
I mean, is that something that you've had experience with? I have one and I haven't put it on the computer yet. I'm just concerned if that's going to cause any issues.
So, like I had explained to this gentleman over here, you have to know your applications and you have to trust in your applications. So I can't tell you a yes or a no. If it's something that I knew, I read the white papers, I read reviews on it, like anything else. Is this a good restaurant? Let me go on Yelp real quick and find out. No, they've got 1 star out of 5. That kind of thought process. And then discussing with the type of agencies that she was asking about and saying, is this good software for my scenario, for my setup? Also knowing whether or not that type of application will affect any of your other applications, inadvertently. So, maybe. Any other questions? Okay. One more?
So I guess I'd like to know if you put a USB drive in your computer and then you want to scan it with the virus software, is it already too late because could it already have infected your computer before you had a chance to scan it?
So potentially yes, in the sense that if I was to have 25 of these and I just left them laying around and you go, ooh, free USB, anybody? No, good. And you plug this one in and go, I'm just going to scan it to be safe. Well, I could have done that intentionally, and then if it's one of these type of devices, you could potentially get infected. Is there a way to kind of know in advance? Not really. I would just use an isolated system. If you don't trust the USB, then I just wouldn't plug it into my system. But even at the bank, we'll do a regular virus scan on USB drives, again, on an isolated machine that's apart from our network so that I can verify whether or not this is secure. Now, if it's this type of device, I may or may not get a hit, but you go with protection as much as you can up until you know that, oops, that wasn't a good choice. And then you...
When you talk about being isolated, so that computer's on the internet, but it's just not on your network? So how would it...
Yeah, so I would have a separate machine that's separate from my internal network. So that might be if I have a segmented network, for example, and I have a test environment, and I understand that not every organization can provide such a thing. Again, it's one of those balance things. Do I have a computer that's maybe a laptop, for example, that's not connected to my network, not even on my Wi-Fi, but I can plug it in and I have my antivirus software and I can do a scan on that. And then, oh, it came out clean. Then I can plug it into my main system. There are also other applications that control the ports, the actual USB ports, this device control on there, and it can kind of alert you as whether or not that was a good thing to do. It also can prevent from your regular employees from accessing that you might not want them to access. So these are actual physical ports that you can also block, not just those windows that I would keep mentioning. Welcome. Any others? Any final ones? One last one?
Formulating the question, but I do a lot of work from home, with internet. Is there any difference if my home computer is connected directly via the Ethernet cable in my house, or if I'm connecting via Wi-Fi? Is there a difference between security, or should I do one versus the other?
It really comes down to the convenience and how secure you've made your router. So the wireless and the wired network all gets routed from that one device. So if you've gone and changed the administrative username and password, which most of us probably don't, right? And I think I'm guilty of that at home. I don't think I have a secure router at home. I could probably go to your house and access your router. So whether you have it plugged in or whether you were going over the internet, over the Wi-Fi, I could still gain access. So securing the router would be the first step, and also securing that particular device. So as far as what method of connectivity, not really that important. Within a business, like for example the bank, we keep those two networks completely separate. So if someone was to try to attack through the Wi-Fi, that's a completely different type of scenario, and it can reach different locations as opposed to if it was a local, physically connected device. So in that setting, it would be different as to what would be more secure, depending on how you set it up. But from home, if it's the same device, there's no difference. It's protecting that one device. All right? I think that's it.